Chapter 2 Case of Self-Execution. In cases of self-inflicted throat wounds, the deceased's lips and eyes are shut, hands clenched, with their arms bent and flexed, indicating a forceful grip on the implement. The flesh turns yellow, accompanied by tightly knotted hair. Wei Shangqing, Judiciary Records, Self-Execution. There was fog as far as the eyes could see, layers upon layers of white ebbing and flowing, as if devouring all in existence. A vague figure could be seen ahead, a tall, fatherly figure. He turned around, and Shayol heard him shouting at the top of his lungs. But she could not make out his words, the heavy fog blurring all her senses. Someone picked her up and ran desperately in the other direction until they slid and fell to the ground. Shayol picked herself up, but the throbbing pain from the fall was the last thing on her mind. She turned around to see that it was Lin, the daughter of the old Wei mansion's wet nurse, and her maidservant who had carried her away. Shayol wanted to help her up, but the few steps that separated them seemed endless. She walked and walked, but Lin was gradually being swallowed up by the fog. Shayol saw Lin fall to her knees, head hanging down eerily before suddenly, like a puppet whose strings were pulled, she raised a knife and slashed her throat open. Lin's body gradually shriveled up and withered away while ears of rice sprang up around her, growing at a breakneck pace. No, no, no! Shayol sobbed as she ran, but still she could not approach the sunken figure in the fog. The fog, constantly growing heavier, had already enveloped Shayol fully within its constraints, even seeping into her eyes, nose, and mouth. She struggled, but it was to no avail, and she continued to fall deeper and deeper into the fog. Shayol's lungs heaved as she awoke from the terrible nightmare, gasping for breath, head buzzing, chest feeling stuffy, and her limbs had gone numb. She took a calming pill from under her pillow and gulped it down before cupping her hands over her nose and mouth to readjust her breathing. A while later, she finally managed to calm down. Her sweat had completely soaked her hair, causing the short hairs framing her face to stick to her skin. She looked as if she had just escaped death. Seemingly sensing its owner's unrest, the little turtle called Satya crawled out of its comfortable little nest and made the arduous journey over to her bed. Her fingers traced the lines of Satya's shell, but her mind was still on that nightmare she had. No matter how much time had passed, Shayol could not bring herself to accept the final ruling of that case. Lin would never have taken her own life. Tongzi glanced at Shayol, sitting on the other side of the desk. The archive was dimly lit. The flame of a single oil lamp flickered, illuminating their faces. There were dark circles under Shayol's eyes, as if she had gone many days without rest, but her gaze was firm as ever. A few days ago, the two of them had rushed to Wanyang County and exposed the culprit behind the poisoning case. Shayol had swapped out the poison with water in an attempt to deceive the suspected sorcerer into confessing, but unexpectedly the man dropped dead on the spot, seemingly succumbing to his own poison. No other personal effects were found on his body, save for some ordinary talismans and a compass. Besides some grains and bits of husk on his teeth, they could find no other clues about the strange poison. Though the suspect's death was odd, the stories of ghostly encounters in the county had quieted down, and thus Shayol Wei and Tangzi had returned to the Central's judiciary to give their report. All was silent until today, when Shayol sought him out in a hurry, claiming to have found more clues from Wanyang County and sharing her intentions to reopen Lin's case. Lin was the maidservant who had accompanied Shayol since her childhood. She died inexplicably in her own home 6 months ago, and her death had been ruled a suicide. Tang Zi knew that Lin held great significance in Shayol's heart, and he was aware of her lingering concern over her case. Still, he found it hard to believe that any connection could exist between these two seemingly unrelated cases, occurring half a year apart. Right now, both of them were in the archive, all records related to Lin's case spread out on the desk before them. All Tang Zi had to do now was trust his partner, who never made any mistakes. Taking a deep breath, he picked up a bamboo scroll. Miss Lin, deceased, formerly a maidservant in Lord Chi's estate, hailing from Thunder Cove, Lee County. The informant is... The very first paragraph left Tang Zi wide-eyed. Shayol Wei. That's right. I was the one who discovered Lin's body. Shayol nodded, expression unchanged. Miss Lin, age 20, height 5 foot and 3 inches. Found dead in the farmhouse where she lived, mouth and eyes closed, her arms curled up, hands clenched around a sharp tool appearing to have slashed her own throat. Grains were found in her mouth. The abdomen was slightly swollen and red, likely due to blood pooling from the impact of falling after excessive consumption of alcohol. The fatal injury was a cut to the throat, 2 inches deep at the point of insertion and shallow at the point of exit, appearing to be self-inflicted. Tang Zi stopped. The examination details ended there. That was the 7th day of the 7th lunar month. After the evening bells rang, I went to visit Lin on Jinsheng Lane as we had agreed, yet she did not answer the door for a long time. Shayol shut her eyes and pressed her hands against her forehead, carefully recalling the scene from that day. After breaking through the door, I found Lin knelt on the ground. She had already been dead for a while. Her hair bun was intact, and her clothes were neat. Everything in the room was in order. There were no signs of struggle. Several neighbors testified that Lin was alone at home before the incident, and she appeared to be drunk. The investigating official concluded that Lin, intoxicated, was unable to resolve her pent-up emotions and inflicted harm upon herself. That's all the information I have on Lin's case. Shayol ruminated over the autopsy report. Do you still remember Zhang San's case from Wanyang County? Witnesses claimed to have seen Zhang San drunk during the period after he consumed the poison. You're saying Lin was poisoned with the same thing? Tang Zi was shocked. After returning from Wanyang County, I re-examined this case and came to a different conclusion than what was recorded. Lin was poisoned that day. She was unconscious and unable to resist. Then, the suspect came from behind, holding the knife with Lin's hand and slashing her throat to make it look like a suicide. The official would not have gone through the trouble of using a silver needle to test for poison after seeing the fatal wound on her throat. Ignoring the astonishment on Tang Zi's face, Shayol went on. If the young girl from the Zhang San case had not stabbed the body, and thus ensured that the case was brought to court, and if we had not connected the symptoms of the previous victims with Zhang San taking eels to threaten the sorcerer, we never would have suspected a poisoning, and Zhang San's case would have been treated like Lin's, a drunken accident leading to death and dealt with hastily. Thinking back to the countless cases of accidental deaths around the capital outskirts, if they were all just like Zhang San's case, Tang Zi felt a shiver run down his spine. Was Lin also murdered by that sorcerer? What about the sorcerer himself? Did he commit suicide for fear of prosecution? Someone else is likely involved. Someone who wanted to silence the sorcerer. Shayol shook her head and opened 2 paper wrappers. One was dated more recently than the other, but they both held the same grain. Does this look familiar to you? This is... The more he looked at them, the more familiar they looked to Tangzi. Are these the same grains found between the sorcerer's teeth? The new one is from the sorcerer's mouth, and the older one was from Lin's. Neither Lin nor the sorcerer were farmers, so the appearance of these grains is inherently suspicious. Who eats grains without removing the husk first? A small incident is documented in the records left by my father. The owner of a carriage was identified through the type of grain that was transported. We should be able to find that case here, too. Shayol stood up and quickly searched through the scrolls on the shelves. Tangzi dared not interrupt her and stood waiting at the side, dumbfounded at the information. Although rice is consumed in Centralis, it is rarely cultivated here. Rice grains were originally products of Thunder Cove due to their abundant yield, and they were introduced to Centralis for propagation. The cultivar grown in Centralis today has significant differences from Thunder Cove's grains. Shayol pulled out one of the scrolls and spread it open by the oil lamp. The document cited the grain catalog, which carefully distinguished the regional differences between rice cultivars. However, none matched the rice grains before them. The grains found in both cases are long and slender, with a lustrous white appearance. It's very clear that they are not the same variety as the ones from Centralis, but more akin to those in Thunder Cove. However, I have visited rice merchants and old officials overseeing grain production in Centralis since returning from Wanyang County, and none of them recognized this variety. A unique southern variety. A unique southern poison. Tangzi could feel his mind becoming a jumbled mess. I have instructed all our contacts and undercover agents to watch the movements of the people nearby Thunder Cove. Meanwhile, we are also monitoring the import and export of all seafood and crops in Centralis. Our task for tonight is simply to find any suspicious cases from the past few years. Shayol laid down a large stack of scrolls on the desk, placing it between a very reluctant Tangzi and herself. This is a concern not just for me nor Wanyang County. If we don't uncover the true culprit behind all this fast, then more and more suicides and accidents may become prevalent in Centralis. Then what about Lin's case? I will go to the chief tomorrow and apply for her exhumation and a second autopsy. End of chapter 2.